All right. We're going to be talking about importing and using a plan or a budget into Stratum. So how do we do that? And that's our topic for today. So I'm going to minimize my camera. I don't think you really need to see me at this point. And let's take a look at today's agenda. Today, we'll, like I said, talking about data import, how do we set that up? Who has access, those types of things. We'll get some of that out of the way. What are the different, there's actually two different types of Excel formats, so we'll cover that. We'll look at the data import process itself, of course, and look at some of the details behind that. I will demonstrate that ability to you so you can see, how it's done, and then, what it would look like after you import some data and what you can do with it after the fact. And of course, as usual, after that all said and done, we can take questions and any comments, and then if you feel the need to contact me, we'll have that information available to you as well. Well, if you haven't seen the new Stratum Data Hub slide, this is it. As you can see, there's different areas now where the different things kind of fit into place. We have this concept now called Stratum Analyst Hub. We have Stratum Access Hub, and then Stratum Analytics. So these are kind of the different areas of the groupings, if you will, of Stratum. Stratum Link over here as well. The data import piece falls under the Stratum Analyst Hub. So if you do not own that piece today, that would be something that you would license and gain access to the spreadsheet import capability, which is what we'll talk about today. But you also, as you can see, gain access to master data, master file data import. The planning piece is available, so you can actually, update numbers, and data copy utility is also available. So that, the Stratum Analyst Hub kind of basically contains all of those different areas that are available, so that you can take advantage of all those different utilities. Today we'll be focusing in on the spreadsheet import. How do we import data? Maybe a sales plan or a budget. How do we get that into Stratum? Normally, I know this is kind of a busy slide, but it kind of shows you the different nature, the different flavors of how you would get data into Stratum. We can see here that, traditionally we always, typically source from ERP. Of course, we've been doing that for decades now. And that would just in turn get my sales data, my inventory data into Stratum, of course. And we would do that through what we would, describe as traditional methods. If it's an on-premise installation, of course, we're not FTPing anything. Typically, we're just feeding that data directly into the pending files, and off we go. That's, I would say, 99% of all of our installs are doing something of that nature. Now we're talking about getting Excel into Stratum as well. So now we've got this new area where through the UI, we're able to actually map in Excel spreadsheets and the data there within and get that into Stratum as well. So that's a new avenue of import that is available to the users. And then, of course, Stratum Link, if you're not familiar with that piece, we're not going to be talking too much in detail about that today, but that is a piece that will allow you to actually tap into APIs, cloud sources, and get that data into Stratum. Sources such as Salesforce or Google, maybe an online CRM or any REST API. Actually, you can actually configure to custom REST APIs as well. So things have changed quite a bit, right? The landscape is a little different these days. And that's kind of how we're keeping in touch and staying in tune with the landscape that stays dynamic, of course. So data import access, how do we get access to this thing? In terms of a licensing structure, if you have a named user license for Stratum, you already have access to it. So that's something you could take advantage of immediately. Of course, you have to be on version 7.1. So if you have a named user license and you're not on version 7.1, you would have to be upgraded. So I guess first things first, the last bullet point there is you got to get on 7.1 or greater of viewer and connector software. And certainly we can help you along with that. We can guide you along. Contact me. I am your success manager, so I can tell you how to be successful. In terms of the Analyst Hub license, you could license that. So if you don't have a name user license and you don't have planning licensed from an older, typically, we have customers out there that have already licensed Planner or the planning capability in Viewer. So either one of those licenses are good. So if you've licensed planning through the old methods, or if you want to purchase a new license called the Stratum Analyst Hub, either one of those are going to give you access to the data import capabilities. Those are basically synonymous licenses. And then finally, you have to be on SQL Server. This does not work for any iSeries instances of Stratum. So that has to be on within SQL Server. So who can access the data import? So now we know how to license it and what versions we need. Basically, who can access the data import? You can make access to basically the security, and the view administrators would have full permissions. So they would have the ability to go in and gain access to the menu. Typically, these folks have access to the admin utilities menu, where they can go in and get access to the data import menus, which are in the the admin utilities view group. If you have advanced and casual users that want to take advantage of it, you can give them access to the data import features. You'll have to map a URL to the data import window menu, and we can provide that for you. But other than that, they can only work with the data imports that they create and own, right? So, and that's probably what you would want anyway. So that's basically how you would set up the access for the users. And so the next step for the admins or the view admins would be to come in and to dictate which category from Stratum they want to use for the data import measure, if you will, or measure group. So the categories, as you can see, are either deemed as user or corporate supplied data. The corporate supplied data is, again, your traditional method of getting data into Stratum. So that's via ETL, via the back end. Deeming a measure group as a user, as you can see, our sales plan down here is deemed user, meaning that this measure group is actually user imported data, right? So first things first, we have to set up the category in Stratum if it's not already set up. And then finally, we would come here after the cube process, and we would see that category, and then we can then designate it as a user driven category. Okay, so then we would save that, and that's saved away. And then we can actually take advantage of the data import. So what is the whole concept of this? And I know this is a little busy, but it's basically from our documentation. We have this concept of using user curated data in Excel spreadsheets that can now be imported directly into Stratum via this data import utility. This can include any type of data, right? So you can use demographic, budget, plans, market trends, weather. Think outside of the box in terms of your industry. What have your users always clamored for but never could get into Stratum because it's not anywhere in an ERP table or it's not in a database anywhere. So this is something that you could take advantage of and really kind of augment more data into your Stratum environment. Another really cool feature of this is that it runs immediately. So once you import and map, the data then would take a few minutes to process, and then you would get an email telling you that the data is ready to go, and then you can go into Viewer. You don't have to wait overnight, and this is something that you can then go in and gain access to immediately. So again, this really provides, it empowers your users, helps them accomplish these data scientist type tasks without having the need to get IT involved, which is something that I'm sure IT would appreciate. And then secondly, the users are doing their own thing, right? They feel empowered to kind of import the data that they feel is important for them or their group of users that are connected to them. Data import is launched from the left panel of Stratum Viewer in the data admin or the admin utilities, and I'll show you where that is in the demo. And then the data mapping window allows you to import the data and map the dimensions and measures found in that import file. That's what, that's kind of what the data import does, right? It allows us to get this type of data into Stratum. And so what type of formats are we talking about in Excel? Well, here's one type of format, that actually finagled this a little bit further because it wasn't smart mapping. So I'll show you what I ended up with, but this is very similar to what I have here. This is a horizontal file where we can see that, the time periods are horizontal in fashion. They're going across the spreadsheet, as you can see, each time period having its own column of data, right? Its own field. Think of this as a table and fields within a table, as you can see, each time period would have, the appropriate data within that field or column. So that's your horizontal. Your transactional data is also accepted, where each row has its own timestamp and date record, right? So this is time now going down in a vertical fashion. Right. Pretty simple. Any of the dimensions that you want to involve here I can see region, sold to, product brand, product, and we'll end up mapping those in. Actually, mine will smart map in because of the way I constructed my file, and the metadata matches such that you can create a file that automatically just maps right in. You don't have to do any manual mapping, which is really nice. So that's kind of what the files look like. And so here's where the data import process menu is. As I said, the left frame menu, you can go in, select, open up your admin utilities and select data import. That takes you to your data import menu, which you can see all the jobs that you've run in the past. And then you can go in, and in this case, if I want to do a new data import, I would click on new, and then I would then browse to the file that I want to import into my view or into my mapping area, right? So I just select my file. It's already been constructed, guiding, adhering to the rules, whether it's horizontal or vertical, and all the dimensions and measures are in there as needed. So once I tell it the file, then it's going to ask me to configure the file. How, what does it look like? Do you want to add the data or do you want to replace it? What's the target category? What format do you want to use? Do you want to use that horizontal or the transactional? Time series is the horizontal option. That's the option I chose. How many rows, header rows do you have, and where with those header rows, where does the transaction date, where is that found, and out of all the header rows? And then here we can see transaction date format. What do the dates look like? So some preliminary information that needs to be supplied so that the interface knows how to handle, the file and that you're getting ready to throw into it, right? So once you do that, you map then the file. Once the file then uploads, you'll see a little quick snapshot of the file, and then you'll be able to use the mapping menus to deem a column a dimension or a measure. You can ignore certain columns, of course, and typically you would ignore the descriptions and the attributes because those will not get loaded in. We're only loading in the key values and the measures found within the file. Here we can see that once the file's been mapped in, we can then verify it. There's a button to verify it and see if it's everything mapped okay. And then you can go ahead and process the import once it's verified. And then it will then process, and you will then get an email telling you that your Stratum data import has completed. It's quite simple and effective, but yet now that the job is complete, and then you can actually go in, run the view with in this case, I see my plan amount, and then I can see, run the view and see what the data looks like. I can compare it to my sales measures. I can, as you can see, it's planning capable, so I can actually change the numbers once I update them and import them. I can actually change them using the planning capabilities as well. So yes, you can not only import, but you can also adjust it once it's imported into the interface. So that was kind of a quick and dirty of how, the process, what data import is, and how, feasibly how you could set that up and how you would actually go through some of that. This is my contact information. I'll give you a second to screen print it, and feel free to contact me if you'd like to discuss this further with me. I'd be glad to have any discussions about your thoughts and how potentially how you can implement this in your company. So let's look at the interface. Let's see how feasibly we could do this using our demonstration. Here we can see that I've got my admin utilities. There's my data import, of course. There's my category menu. If we take a quick look at that, I click on the category menu and we can see that indeed there's all my categories. And here I've got sales plan set up as a user versus a corporate data feed. So that certainly has to be done. The measure group now knows, what angle the data is going to be hitting it at, right? So now we can pursue the data import. Before we do that, let's take a look at the actual file that we're going to look at and import. If I open that up, we can see that the file here, it's horizontal in fashion. So here I can see that I've got some product and product long descriptions here. If I scroll here to the left, I've also got my region description, sold to, product brand and its description, product, and then the data, as you can see, the plan data goes across in a horizontal fashion. I've also got some grand totaling going on over here. And, down here on the bottom, I can see that the grand total is 175,079,256. So yeah, so this is basically what it looks like. The header, as you can see, I've got the data here on the third row. I've got my measure name right there on the second header row, and then other metadata here that will be mapped in on my first header row. So I'm going to close this out. We're going to map that in. So let's go ahead and select it. I'm going to do a data import, and we're going to select a new. There's that file we just looked at. I'm going to click on open. It's then going to ask me how to configure the file, right? So now I'm going to get those questions about configuring the file. Here I'm going to do a add or a replace. So you can augment or do a refresh. Here I can do a sales, select which target category. Of course, you're not going to see everything here because you've got everything set up by the administrator so that, there's only a couple of categories here that I can import data into. So here I can go ahead and select my sales plan. I'm going to select time series instead of transactions because my time periods are going across in a horizontal fashion. We've got 3 header rows, and on that, we've got the time periods are actually found on that third row. What do they look like? Well, they're more month, date, year, right? So let's go ahead and click OK. It's then going to upload a preview of that spreadsheet. I'm going to go into a full screen mode, and this is what I like to see. Everything's mapped. So now I can see that my dimension is region. That's been designated already. It's ignoring my long description. My sold to's mapped. My sold to long description is ignored, and so on and so forth. This actually worked perfectly. Let's take a look at my measures. We can see that the measures are all mapped perfectly. So now we can see that everything, measure plan amount, everything's mapped. This is fantastic. I don't have to do anything. My grand total is ignored, and other columns over here to the right of the file were, appropriately enough, they were ignored. So I have no mapping to do other than the fact that I verified my mapping just by eyeballing it. And then I can validate this. If I click on validation, it'll actually go through a validation as well. And it says in this case, your data mapping is valid. You can now click the process icon, a button to go ahead and process. And that's that button right here in the upper left-hand corner. I can then submit this. It will then run. This actually runs in a few minutes. It's within a minute, I think. And then it sends the email along. And then at that point, I can then go in and take a look at the data. So if we actually take a look at the data that I imported, I'm looking at sales. I can use a couple of views here. This is one view where I can see at product brand what that plan amount looks like now within a standard, comparative view, right? I can then drill to product because I know the product was available. Let's find a product class that has a better breakout, such as farm fresh, and here's all that data that I imported for my plan amount. Looks like I even have a plan with no transactions there. How about that? So, pretty cool. I can drill on it now. I can see it. I can analyze against it. What else can I do with it? Well, if you have another view set up, you can actually go in and update it. So if I go in and let's see, where is that view? Let's take a look at, sales versus plan. Here it is, sales versus budget analysis. There's that plan measure right there. As you can see, the yellow arrows are telling me that it's now update capable. Check out that number, right? So now we can see that 175,079,256. It's matching to the dollar. That's what we want to see, right? And now, if I want to use the planning capabilities, maybe for Wilder Foods in December of the planned year, I plan on, instead of instead of 3.6 million, maybe I'm targeting for 4 million. So I can actually, have that available. I can then write that in and save that away as an adjustment to the plan amount. I can do another import. I might have two target categories. One is being a frozen measure, and then maybe one that's workable. So that way I can, go ahead and make my adjustments, and I still have record of what the original plan was. I mean, you can really kind of build this out, right? And you can make it your own and own it and wrap it around a business process or two or three, and really kind of let Stratum sing for you in terms of how it can handle the data from these different disparate spreadsheets that are that are important, that are important for not only the user, for maybe a group of users that find that data necessary to have into Stratum. So, that's kind of what I wanted to take you through. As you can see, I was able to kind of go in, define the data import, select a spreadsheet that I already created. I was able to see how Stratum automatically mapped it for me. It was very minimal work for me in terms of what I needed to do in order to get the data into, other than creating the file, of course. And you can create the file from viewer. Actually, that's what I did. I took just an export of a viewer view and I massaged it accordingly. It didn't take long. And so the next thing you know, you've got data into your Stratum views. And you can either make adjustments to it or do other things as well.